Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the forest fires raging around Los Angeles, or greater Los Angeles, the Palisades and so on at the moment, and the examination of why these fires have been so devastating and so out of control is being looked at, and diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action hires at all levels, the local mayor and fire chief and the various heads of the fire departments and so on, are being looked at as being, hey, none of these people are really qualified. None of these people have any experience or any even competence, base level competence. You don't have to be a fire management genius to be able to at least deliver a base level of fire management and fire protection and so on. So anybody with an IQ of 100 plus who's committed and dedicated to public service would do a better job than these people are doing, I would argue. But is this restricted to California or the United States? And wherever across the entire Western world, the white world, the globalists have brutally forced diversity, equity, inclusion, and affirmative action. It's been a device that they've used to squeeze competent, straight white males out of as many jobs as they can. It's been that's the sole purpose of it. They come out with programs, well, hey, we don't have an equal number of black lesbians or something. They don't give a shit about black lesbians, not even a tiny bit. What they do need is a device, a blunt instrument to push white people out. And those are the diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action is one of those devices. So, but they're replacing competent, skilled, qualified white people with dedication to public service. And they're putting in, low IQ black lesbian. I'm using that proverbial low IQ proverbial black lesbian into the roles, who can't even deliver basic level services and has no dedication to the community or the society and hates the society and so on. And those are the people who are in charge. Those are the people that would secretly relish the idea of, the White House, the houses of middle-class white people all burning down. That would be, to them, that would be a social achievement, something that they could celebrate. Now, given their dedications to tear the society down, society provides them with everything they have, by the way, but they don't think that far ahead. So let's have a look now. You say, well, it can't be that bad. I mean, surely anybody with half a brain could do a better job than these people, but you need to sort of get into the ideology and the fanaticism that comes with it. Now, these same things happen in Australia and Canada, and I've seen it firsthand in Australia, and how these diversity, equity, inclusion people have been put into jobs that would be, considered somewhat prestigious in society. I'm in charge of the local fire station, and so they want to give these jobs to anyone but qualified and competent white people. Give it to a woman, and if she's a lesbian, if she's a black lesbian, then there's even more points to be gained from that. So the idea that the fire chief would be someone who's going to stop the fire and prevent the fires from spreading, is going to do that it doesn't even figure into the lexicon. What they're looking at is this is considered to be a prestigious job, and the government's paying or subsidizing most of it. I think people give donations and so on as well, but nonetheless, the view is that white men, straight white men, should be squeezed out. Now, doesn't mean straight white men were absolutely perfect 100% of the time everywhere, and it doesn't mean that. But it means that the affirmative action hires that have been put in are much less qualified than the people who were there. Therefore, we've got a very negative scenario here, where the fire management and fire management practices have been thoroughly and totally politicized. And then I'll come back to that in a minute. And money that was allocated to, say, doing controlled burns, or back burning as it's sometimes called, doing controlled burns to remove the brush that sends these fires into hysterical proportions, and that budget money's taken away from fire management practices and being given to things like lesbian painting classes and black lesbian promotion movies, and doing all sorts of other DEI, AA, affirmative action and propaganda, and putting all sorts of DEI programs in place. So money's taken from worthwhile things such as fire management and put into ideological fantasy delusions. So what firsthand have I observed? Well, a few years ago, I was some friends of ours had to go overseas on an emergency, and it was we had a few days of sort of vacation on, and so we said we would look after their place, and they've got some prize dogs, and they don't like them going into kennels, and they only want them to be cared for by people they know, and we know the dogs quite well, and that sort of thing. So we come over, and it was a few days. Anyway, I took the dogs down to this local park, or park that was nearby, and it's quite a large park. It's many acres of land, probably goes for over 1,000 meters, about 1,200 meters one way, and say 450 meters left to right. So it's quite a large area. And they were doing a fire practice thing. So all the fire engine, fire trucks and so on were there, and all the personnel and all the people that do it were there. So there was the fire chief there. Now, the fire chief was a very angry-looking lesbian, and who looked very lesbian. There was no questioning where she came. She was the fire chief. Now, her job, as she perceived it, and so I sidled up for a chat. Her job, as she perceived it, was not to put out fires, or not to prevent fires, or not to make sure that the fire procedures were efficient and effective, and the fire trucks were well maintained. No. Her job was social engineering. Her job was to just show that those straight white, fascist Nazi Christian males, who were all Hitler, it seemed, to show them who was boss now. We're in charge, and our ideology, the leftist lesbian ideology, and we're the ones, and we'll engineer society now. And so she viewed that her job was to create this sort of ideological social nirvana. That meant that it was axiomatic that straight white males must only be given the most menial tasks. They can't be given serious jobs or anything like that. And if they weren't prepared to accept that the lesbians were now in charge, meant that they just weren't needed. So it doesn't matter what expertise they had, or capability or knowledge of controlling fires or anything. Nah, you're out, buddy. So she came in with a radical ideological platform. Now, through her contacts, through as I understand this, she's got a lot of contacts in the leftist government through some of the radical unions, like the teachers' union. She'd previously been a teacher, and so they lobbied. They wanted her to be given this job. Now, why would you do that? Just consider this: you're maybe a government functionary, or a senior government functionary, and here's this person. Do they even meet this person? Here's this angry, ideological, fanatical lesbian in front of you that says that I'm going to change. I'm going to get rid of those straight white males. Anybody with competence and skill in putting out fires, I'm going to get rid of the motherfuckers because they're all fucking Nazis. So, and that's something. Would you sign off on that? I mean, I wouldn't dream of signing off on something like that. Even if I had sympathy with their ideological position, it would obviously would be, if I were in a position to sanction that sort of thing, and whoever did sanction it would have obviously been aware that this would be a catastrophic move in terms of fire prevention and fire management to do this. Now, if you watch as I did, and as I watched the they were doing like a trial run on preparing the fire trucks and putting out fires. I wasn't sure whether it was forest fires or say inner city type fires. It wasn't plain. And the wrong people in the wrong jobs, the people that no one seemed to know what they were doing. They were tripping over each other and falling over each other. They didn't seem to know, which end was up, and it was ridiculous. And just watching it, it was a shambles from beginning to end. Now the lesbian was barking out orders, and you do this and you do. So her sole sort of purpose of being there was to look important and to be a strong and powerful woman, and that was her sort of soul. They thought, what do you your job is to put out fires and to manage fires. I mean, that's it. That's your job in this role. Just concentrate on that. But for some reason, it couldn't seem to be done. She screamed. There was some older, too old for the job in my view. There were some older straight white males there who were simpering. All the men around her, by the way, be they gay or not, was just simpering. They simpered in her presence. And which she liked. She obviously was getting off on that. I watched, but they simpered. And what did they want? Did they want, they want to tie them to a chair and beat them? I mean, what's going on here? Why would you even have simpering men like that around? They're hardly the people who are going to jump up and take the responsibility, which is possibly what they wanted. They wanted, irresponsible or incapable of people taking responsibility, simpering males in these positions. They all seem to have some sort of a public service type background rather than just fire expertise in itself. But the idea of the big burly fireman that, rushes into the burning building and saves the baby and carries out the pregnant woman, that sort of stuff, that I didn't see one man that would fit that, even come anywhere near fitting that category. So I'm wondering, as I'm watching all this, and I'm thinking these guys are fucking useless. That they couldn't put out a fire in a barbecue or something. So anyway, watching it all, and so it was obvious they were incompetent and hugely so. Now maybe they were trying to get rid of those rough edges by doing these trial runs, but the whole structure of it didn't really lend itself to the idea, well, we're not up to standard, we're not up to scratch now, but if we work hard at it, we can get there. That wasn't the imperative that was driving these people. Now, fortunately, they had a manual, as in a policy procedure manual, and I had someone had one there, and I sort of had a look at like the front or the page they were on. They had it open, and it talked about nothing but racial quotas and gender quotas, and it had to be the LGBTQ number of people, all this sort of stuff was all I saw on the page. Was there anything about putting out fires? So I got online and found the whole manual, and you'd struggle to find anything about actual skills and capabilities and knowledge to put out fires or control fires. There was really only ideological stuff in there, again, about quotas for black lesbians and the like. The competence tests, so there was a competence test where you had to be able to carry a certain amount of weight for a certain amount of time. You had to be able to climb up a ladder carrying a certain amount. And so it was a physical competence test. And it's quite, I would imagine, I've never been a firefighter, by the way, but I would imagine it's quite a physically demanding. If you're climbing up a ladder or climbing down a ladder carrying a body, I mean, you've got to be in pretty decent condition to do that. Or even to drag someone out of a burning building, you've got to be in good condition. What if it's some 250-pound guy you're trying to drag out? I mean, that's so. The test or the manual just talked about reducing the standards, saying that if you have high levels of requirements for physical fitness, then that's racist and it's misogynist and it's patriarchy and so on. So in order to create an equitable workforce, we just lower the standards and lower the standards and lower the standards, affirmative action on steroids. And in that way, we can get social equity. So they're prioritizing abstract sort of notions of social equity. They're prioritizing that by far and away over any sort of competence, again, in putting out and controlling fires. So then that's it. Now here's another. I know one of the senior people in the fire sort of control administration in the region of Australia I live in, and he's a pretty senior guy, and he's the sort of guy very dedicated to public service. I think he's a bit old to do the heavy lifting now, but nonetheless, that his dedication to public service can't be questioned. Does he see it as a matter of competence? Now, I've met some of the people sort of in that area that people he knows, and the people around him don't necessarily see that it's a matter of ability to do the job of controlling the fire. They don't quite see the world that way. Now, they're not all straight white males, but most of them are. They see it more of a power and control that I can tell those people they have to evacuate this area, that I can stop the traffic and say to people, you can't go down this road. I can order the helicopter to come here, so they see it as more of an issue of power and giving orders, rather than that those orders will lead to or are material in contributing to the fire. They see the idea of a fire, actually putting out the fires or controlling the fires, as a political issue, not as a practical issue, which rather surprised me. I didn't sort of quite see it that way. But it is, because the allocation of funds to do, controlled burning and making sure that the brush that ignites and causes runaway fires, that's being burned off or controlled in some way, and that the resources in terms of helicopters and airplanes to do water bombing, that they're available, that they're properly maintained, that the fire trucks are maintained to a high standard of readiness. And I was surprised at how often when a fire breaks out that there's half the fire trucks are being maintained and or they're they haven't been repaired, or that they haven't got any water in them, or things like this. And I was staggered at that. The lack of preparedness really took me by surprise. Also, the idea of controlled, emergency controlled burns. So there's a forest fire coming along, and you want to try and cut it off. So so what you do is you try and do a controlled burn along a strip of land, and it's done in emergency conditions. So a controlled burn, and that will neutralise the fire as it heads off in a certain direction. And so these incompetent DEI people, not the guys I was talking about, the DEI people, want to do this controlled burn. Now, that was fair enough. I mean, the idea but it's done in emergency conditions, and there was a bit of a breeze, and it was blowing in a certain direction. So they wanted to cut it off there. But they selected an area that was too close to where the actual fire was raging. Now, if you looked at the speed the fire was moving, and it was tied reasonably closely to wind speed. If you looked at where the fire was moving, then you would have had to do a controlled burn several thousand meters away, because the fire would reach the area that we're proposing to do the controlled burn in maybe an hour or two at most. So, but instead they wanted to keep the area of the controlled burn close. So then they lost control of it because the actual forest fire came along and joined in with the controlled burn, but while the controlled burn was still raging. So then the whole thing took off, and hundreds of thousands of acres ended up burning because they lost control of it. Now, they could have still kept control of it if they'd had the water bombing aircraft on standby, but no one had thought to organise that. Everyone thought it must be someone else's job to do it. So the organisational structure, the chain of command, the taking of responsibility, the idea of the notion that you can have an emergency control burn close to a raging forest fire, these sorts of things. These are something that not only amateurs would make, but idiots would make. You have to be low IQ. I know nothing about managing forest fires, but I would view that as very risky. And I know nothing. So these are people who are in the position. It is their responsibility to do this. So when we look at why are these forest fires raging, there's a political aspect that the politicians are withholding money from from doing things like control burns, that the budgets that should be spent on truck maintenance and aircraft maintenance, that sort of thing, are being spent on diversity and affirmative action programs instead of and where it should be. So when it does come to an emergency, which doesn't happen every day, when it does come to an emergency, then there's a lack of training, preparation, responsibility, organisational structure, a lack of available equipment. The list just goes on and on and on. And then you look at the decision making made by amateurs that particularly with the proverbial black lesbian, that don't perceive they have any necessity or any requirement to be public servants looking to protect the public from, in this case, forest fires. They have no dedication to public service at all, and just live in their fantasy, delusional affirmative action world and think that's it. Their job's now done. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.